We are in the midst of a very interesting time in the theme park industry. It is well known that Disney and Universal are the two largest and most prominent theme park companies in the US, if not the world. As leaders of the industry, Disney parks and Universal parks have been in competition with each other for years, with Disney parks always reigning supreme as the most popular, culturally relevant, and visited theme parks in the world. The hub of both Disney and Universal is Orlando, Florida. They are in direct competition with each other in other parts of the world, particularly in the Los Angeles area, but the Orlando parks are generally seen as the focal point of the theme park industry. Many recent changes have taken place in both Walt Disney World and the Universal Orlando Resort, as well as changes occurring within the larger companies as a whole that point the theme park industry in a new direction. Furthermore, recent additions to both resorts create a very interesting current theme park landscape. Let's go through the recent additions and changes that have occurred in each company and dissect what they could mean for the theme park industry moving forward. First, let's briefly walk through the history of the two Orlando theme park resorts, both their histories in general and their histories as competitors. Disney and Universal haven't always been direct competitors like they are today. Disney revolutionized the theme park industry with the opening of Disneyland in 1955, followed by Walt Disney World's Magic Kingdom in 1971. Since then, the Disneyland and Walt Disney World resorts have expanded. Today, the Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando has 4 theme parks, opening Epcot in 1982, Hollywood Studios in 1989, and Animal Kingdom in 1998. In the midst of this, Universal Parks began with a smaller existence. Universal Studios Hollywood opened as a theme park in 1964, at the time with only one attraction, the tram tour of the working movie studio. Over the years, it grew into the full-fledged theme park it is today. Meanwhile, Universal Studios began working on plans to create a second studio tour and theme park in Orlando, which was already a tourist destination thanks to the Walt Disney World Resort. This is where the competition began between Disney and Universal. When Disney leadership heard that Universal were coming to Orlando, they made moves to beat them at their own game, opening the aforementioned Hollywood Studios with its own working movie studio and tram tour. Universal was forced to get creative, in a way that would actually end up making the theme park more interesting and exciting. Rather than relying on the tram tour, they created a series of standalone attractions based on sections of the tram tour, creating new rides that would go down in history as classics. Despite Universal's success in Orlando, Disney was the undisputed king of the world in the theme park landscape. Universal lived a relatively quiet existence in comparison, existing to many as a supplement to their Disney trips rather than being a destination on its own. During this time, Universal built its second gate in Orlando, opening Islands of Adventure in 1999. It wasn't actually until 2010 when Universal began to be considered as a legitimate competitor to Disney. In 2010, Universal's Islands of Adventure unveiled the Wizarding World of Harry Potter Hogsmeade, one of the most grand, elaborate, and successful theme park lands ever created. 4 years later, in 2014, Universal Studios Florida constructed and opened their second entry in the Wizarding World, Diagon Alley. These two Harry Potter lands brought critical and financial success to Universal, bringing attendance boosts to their parks. This launched a series of one-ups between Disney World and Universal Studios. Each sought to create new, more elaborate, more immersive lands or attractions than the other. Disney's first response to the Wizarding World was Pandora: The World of Avatar, which opened in Animal Kingdom in 2017, followed by Star Wars: Galaxy's Edge, which opened in Hollywood Studios and Disneyland in 2019. Each of these lands was an attempt to create a highly immersive land on the same scale as Universal's Wizarding World. Today, Universal is working on their next response, which we will circle back to later. Over time, the gap in attendance has begun to close between Disney World and Universal Studios. Not by much, as Disney is still the undisputed leader of the industry, but Universal over time has made more of a name for itself, becoming a destination in its own right rather than just a supplement to people's Disney World vacations. Significant additions and changes have occurred in Walt Disney World and Universal Studios Orlando in recent years, with the past 5 years being especially interesting. Let's first cover every major ride or theme park land addition since 2019. As I previously mentioned, Disney World opened Star Wars Galaxy's Edge in 2019. Galaxy's Edge has 2 major rides and a series of small shops, food offerings, and other small attractions. In the theme park community, I think Galaxy's Edge has had lukewarm to generally positive reception. Some aspects of the land are undeniably grand, such as the real-life, life-size recreation of the Millennium Falcon, or the grandiose, high-tech, and high-budget Rise of the Resistance attraction. However, other aspects of the land have not received excellent reception. The first ride to open in the area was Millennium Falcon's Smuggler's Run, an interactive motion simulator that allows guests to pilot a mission on the Millennium Falcon. The second ride, which opened a few months after the initial unveiling of Galaxy's Edge, is Rise of the Resistance, a dark ride that takes guests on a mission to escape a First Order Star Destroyer. Among theme park fans, Smuggler's Run has received modest fanfare, with many not caring for the addition of a new screen-based motion simulator in the park. Other aspects of Galaxy's Edge are somewhat limited, as the other attractions in the area are merchandise shops, a restaurant that is difficult to obtain a reservation to, and significant upcharge attractions that allow you to build a droid or a lightsaber. In general, Galaxy's Edge is seen as a success, but many have valid complaints about the area. Many question why Disney chose to set the area in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, which was the recent trilogy of Disney's own creation that started out promising but became a divisive mess that crashed and burned critically. Others have said that Galaxy's Edge doesn't feel Star Wars enough, or that the land feels like a dingy shopping mall. Personally, I found Galaxy's Edge to feel surprisingly lifeless for something that is supposed to be a bustling trade depot set in the Star Wars universe. There is not much for me to explore in Galaxy's Edge, like there is in something like Diagon Alley in the Wizarding World over at Universal. Galaxy's Edge consisted of blank stores selling cheap yet overpriced Star Wars merchandise and had almost nothing to explore or discover outside of that. I personally have a distaste for motion simulators, including Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. On the other hand, many consider Rise of the Resistance to be a resounding win for Walt Disney World, and I do have to agree with this note. Much of Rise of the Resistance's success can be attributed to its large budget, with its large set pieces being one of the most awe-inspiring and exciting aspects of it. I do have to admit, though, that creative choices were made when creating Rise of the Resistance, and it has a technical attention to detail that many modern Disney rides lack. In general, Galaxy's Edge was a success, but I feel that many of the criticisms directed at it are valid. Moving on, in 2021, Disney opened a new addition to Epcot, Remy's Ratatouille Adventure. Personally, I find Remy's Ratatouille Adventure to be delightful, but I entirely attribute that to my bias towards the film, which is a personal favorite of mine, as well as my unreasonable love of the ride vehicles. Setting my bias aside, I can agree with the consensus about this ride, which is that, objectively, it was an underwhelming addition to Epcot. Remy's Ratatouille Adventure in Epcot is a clone of a version of the ride that opened in Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris in 2014, and many critics of the ride note that it feels like a remnant of the early days of trackless dark ride technology. The ride is also reliant on screen technology, featuring many unconvincing screen segments where the ride vehicles have very little movement. While I have a personal fondness for this ride, I entirely understand why it received middling to negative reception from theme park fans. Additionally, many Epcot fans don't care for the recent IP-based additions to a park that was once free of Disney IP and focused on edutainment attractions. Speaking of, another major addition to Epcot opened in 2022. This was the indoor roller coaster Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. Cosmic Rewind featured a new ride system developed personally for this ride by roller coaster manufacturer Vekoma. This system allowed the ride vehicles to rotate in a controlled spin, allowing the ride designers to direct riders' attention to specific scenes or set pieces. The ride features a large themed indoor setting that places riders in outer space. It also features a backwards launch and is set to a randomly rotating playlist of music. The ride is undoubtedly well made, and I personally call it Space Mountain's cool high-budget grandson. The ride is fun. How could it not be? It's designed to be fun, with its high-budget, unique ride system and music selection carrying a lot of the weight. Many park fans agree, praising the ride for its enjoyable experience. However, Cosmic Rewind has the same glaring issue as Remy's Ratatouille adventure. What is it doing in Epcot? To this point, I will also bring up Journey of Water, which opened in 2023. This is a fairly lackluster attraction. It is a trail with interactive water features based on the film Moana. Again, many have asked what this and similar attractions are doing in Epcot. For those unfamiliar, Epcot opened as a sort of permanent World's Fair, featuring pavilions focused on teaching visitors about various topics in industry, technology, and science, as well as a world showcase featuring displays from various countries around the world. A complex series of factors led to Epcot becoming the IP dumping ground it is today. Too many factors for me to cover here, because once I start talking about the death of Epcot, I'm not going to stop until I explain every part of the story. Other IP-based rides made their way into Epcot before 2019. The Living Seas was reskinned to include characters from Finding Nemo in 2007. The Grand Fiesta Tour starring the Three Caballeros opened the same year, and Frozen Ever After replaced the ride Maelstrom in the Norway Pavilion of World Showcase in 2014. These recent IP-based attractions are not bad rides, but they are part of larger issues within Epcot of senseless IP integration, wasted potential, and a disregard for the park's history. 3 new or updated rides opened in the Magic Kingdom in 2023 and 2024. First was Tron Light Cycle Run in 2023, a new roller coaster in Tomorrowland. Reception for Tron was generally positive, but a bit quiet, as it took almost 6 full years of construction from announcement to opening day. It seems that by the time it finally opened at Magic Kingdom, much of the hype for the attraction had died out, and the opening was met with little fanfare compared to other large attraction openings. Next, opening in the summer of 2024 was Tiana's Bayou Adventure, a reskin of the previously existing Splash Mountain attraction. Tiana's has had mixed reception. The ride has been met with a lot of valid criticism, particularly regarding its story issues as well as its technical issues in the months following its opening. The ride has become infamous for downtime, breakdowns, and issues with the new animatronics. While troubles with the animatronics could be expected, it is odd for a reskinned ride like Tiana's to have this much downtime and technical issues. Tiana's has also received a lot of criticism directed towards its story. Tiana's has glaring story problems, as well as a lack of some of the things that made its film, Princess and the Frog, special, and some of the things that made the ride's predecessor special. It features a surprising lack of urgency or peril that feels almost necessary for a ride following the foundations of Splash Mountain. And some have also found the story to be confusing while on the ride. I also want to bring up a specific point that another creator made about Tiana's. In the YouTube video, The Wasted Potential with Tiana's Bayou Adventure by Theme Park Nerd, they discuss how Tiana's business in the ride, Tiana's Foods, is explicitly said to be employee-owned. It feels incredibly disingenuous for the Disney company to essentially be cosplaying as an employee-owned business for the sake of theming. On top of that, Disney implemented cast member blackout days for almost 2 months in the summer of 2024, blocking staff from entering Magic Kingdom, presumably to line up with the opening of Tiana's Bayou Adventure, making the employee-owned Tiana's Foods feel particularly distasteful and hypocritical. Also opening in the summer of 2024 was the updated Country Bear Musical Jamboree. This attraction was an opening day attraction at Magic Kingdom and is an animatronic show featuring singing characters that used to include old-fashioned country songs. In 2024, it was updated to now have the bears singing famous Disney musical numbers. While there were many upgrades made to the show and animatronics, many fans have taken issue with the style and set list of the new Country Bear Musical Jamboree, with many of the choices feeling tasteless and almost like a betrayal of the spirit of the Country Bears. Park fans were generally not happy to return to the updated attraction to find the bears dressed in tassels and rhinestones and singing Try Everything from Zootopia. That is every edition that opened in Disney World since 2019. And going back through all of them, there is at least one widespread and reasonable complaint for almost all of them. The only attraction that I didn't explicitly list any major complaints or criticism about is Rise of the Resistance. However, I didn't mention the issues Rise of the Resistance had with its virtual queue, which is a topic I will return to later. Let's now pivot to discuss every major attraction that's opened at Universal Studios Florida since 2019, of which there are much fewer than there were for Disney World. First, opening in 2019, is Hagrid's Magical Creatures Motorbike Adventure at Islands of Adventure. This ride is a family-friendly roller coaster themed to Hagrid's flying motorcycle from the Harry Potter series, manufactured by Intamin Amusement Rides. The ride features 7 launches, a backwards section, a drop track, onboard audio, and several large audio animatronic figures. At the time of its opening, it was the most expensive roller coaster ever built. This record was allegedly beaten 3 years later by Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind. I will take a moment to acknowledge that Hagrid's had a rough opening. The ride was plagued with technical issues and downtime in its opening months. On opening day, the ride had significant downtime and at one point amassed a 10-hour line. Despite its rough start, Hagrid's was met with resounding positive reviews. Hagrid's is technically a family coaster, but even seasoned coaster enthusiasts can admit that Hagrid's is a fun and forceful ride. It has a thrilling variety of elements, as well as excellent theming and storytelling, all of which launched this ride into world-class standing. Following Hagrid's, the next attraction to open at the Universal Studios Orlando Resort was the Jurassic World Velocicoaster. This ride opened in Islands of Adventure in 2021. Velocicoaster, similar to Hagrid's, is an Intamin multi-launch coaster. However, the two are barely comparable. Velocicoaster kicks up the thrill level significantly, featuring 2 launches, 4 inversions, and speeds up to 70 miles per hour. It features a variety of dynamic elements, as well as excellent and thorough theming. It also reaches a thrill level that Disney would never opt for, being among the most thrilling and intense rides on the planet. Before moving on, I would also like to discuss something that happened surrounding the opening of Velocicoaster. Universal began constructing Velocicoaster in the park before officially announcing it, leading fans to see it clearly visible in the parks. And when Universal continued to attempt secrecy with the ride, a running joke was started that the park was building a giant churro stand. In response to this, after the ride was officially announced and then opened to the public, guests who rode Velocicoaster on opening day were handed a free churro at the exit of the attraction. This, to me, is a fun moment that purely existed to acknowledge a fan joke and make the opening day experience of Velocicoaster even more positive. Hagrid's and Velocicoaster opening back-to-back in neighboring lands are an incredible duo for Universal. Both were received incredibly well, and many theme park fans hold the opinion that the two are some of the best roller coasters ever created. I personally hold this belief. These two demonstrate that Universal has the ability to create masterful attractions that combine world-class theming with incredible thrill, and I consider them to be my own 2 favorite roller coasters. Universal had a bit of a rough time in the late 2010s, as people often complained that Universal had an over-reliance on screen-based attractions. They opened many screen-based rides during this era that were usually not the most well-received attractions, including some that have gone down as some of the worst rides ever created by the company. Speaking of, I will take this time to talk about the third and most recent ride that Universal has opened at the Florida resort. And this one is not quite in the same category as the previous 2. In 2023, Universal opened Villain Con Minion Blast, a moving walkway shooter attraction, and another screen-based ride. The ride does have some very minimal, nice-looking physical sets, but they are mixed in with screen portions that take up the majority of the attraction. I would consider this a fairly negative addition in Universal's recent lineup, and a callback to a less creatively interesting time in Universal's history that it felt like we had just escaped. Despite this, Hagrid's and Velocicoaster show Universal moving in an exciting direction creatively in the Orlando resort. To many, these were the rides that proved that Universal was exiting their troubling time in the 2010s, and that they actually stood a chance as a legitimate competitor to Disney, especially considering the issues with Disney World's recent additions. Rides are only one aspect of a theme park. Sure, incredible rides will make your day at a theme park better, but what's most important to ensuring guests have an overall pleasant and satisfying experience, if not have their expectations exceeded and leave with the idea that they had a good day at the park, is ensuring that the overall guest experience is a positive one. This involves things like queues, ride downtimes, merchandise and shopping, food, etc. Disney in recent years has made changes throughout their parks and resorts that lead to customers having increasingly worse experiences during their Disney vacations. Disney's first and likely most talked about recent change is their removal of the free FastPass system that had been in place in the parks for over 20 years, and the replacement of that with the paid Genie Plus and Lightning Lane systems in 2021. I am not a Genie Plus and Lightning Lane expert, but there are many people who are, and if you are interested in the subject, I encourage you to look for other videos or articles on the topic. Overall, though, park fans have taken issue with the fact that the new systems were now a paid service, while FastPass, in the many iterations it had gone through over the years, had been free. Following the pandemic, Disney switched to this new system, and since then, the consensus regarding the guest experience at Disney parks has become one of confusion. People say that visiting a Disney park has gotten more complicated, that one has to learn how to work a series of systems and apps in order to have a good day at a Disney park. This wasn't made better by the 2024 announcement that revealed that Genie Plus would now be retired as well, being replaced with two new systems called Lightning Lane Multipass and Lightning Lane Single Pass. Disney claims that the change was to make the system simpler and easier to understand, but this does not seem to actually be the result of this new system. Reading through it, the system still sounds incredibly complex, confusing, and temperamental. Then, while I was in the process of scripting this video, yet another Lightning Lane system was announced, known as Lightning Lane Premier Pass. This will allow guests to pay once to skip lines all day. The price tag for this system is steep, costing several $100s per person, per park, per day. A topic I will cover in a moment is Universal's take on the skip-the-line system, known as Universal Express Pass. Express Pass functions in essentially the same way as the Lightning Lane Premier Pass, and several smaller amusement and theme parks also have skip-the-line systems that function in this way. Express Pass at Universal is also not cheap. However, the key difference between Lightning Lane Premier Pass and similar systems at other parks is that every iteration of Lightning Lane has been a paid system, when Disney's original FastPass system was a free service for years. Another change in the parks is that in recent years, Disney has begun implementing a virtual queue system for new attractions. The way this generally worked was that guests had two chances to secure a spot in the virtual queue on any particular day at the park. The first was at 7 a.m., and one could try for a spot in the virtual queue from any physical location. To get into the virtual queue, one had to reload the page on the Disney World app at the exact perfect moment when it turned from 6:59 to 7 a.m., and maybe that would allow them to secure a spot for their party. If they didn't get a time slot during the 7 a.m. selection, they had one more chance. For this, guests needed to be in the park where the new attraction was located to try for the second time slot at 1 p.m. If a guest secured a spot in the 7 a.m. virtual queue, they could not try again that day. If a guest didn't secure a spot in either round, they simply did not get to ride the new attraction that day. This system was implemented for new attractions like Rise of the Resistance and Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, making the opening of those attractions very frustrating for the average park fan. Many park guests and fans have taken issue with this system. For one, people have said that the virtual queue system had a similar effect to that of the new Lightning Lane system, in that it made their park days immensely more confusing and stressful. Second, many people hold the opinion that they would rather just take their chances with a physical queue, and would be happy to wait in a long line if it meant that they actually got the chance to experience the attraction. With the virtual queue system, many guests visiting a park with a new attraction would not get to experience the attraction at all, and those who did get a spot in the virtual queue only got one chance to experience the ride that day. On top of all of this, from the reopening of Disney World after the pandemic until January 2024, park reservations were required to enter a Disney World park on top of a valid day ticket. All of these factors working together make going to a Disney World park in the 2020s a complicated hassle. A guest needs to do their homework before visiting the parks, and it feels that if you don't utilize all of the systems in the way you're supposed to, then you won't be able to maximize your day at the park. Compare this to the experience of going to a Universal park today. Express Pass costs significantly more than Disney's Lightning Lane service, although this is about to change with the rollout of Lightning Lane Premier Pass. Express Pass usually costs somewhere between $100 and upwards of $300 for one person to get Express Pass for one day. However, the Lightning Lane system that currently exists in the parks usually costs less because it is a pay-per-ride system. The standard cost for one Lightning Lane is usually $15 per person per ride. With multiple Lightning Lanes, the cost to skip a few lines for an entire family easily adds up. Meanwhile, Express Pass is a one-cost ticket that allows a guest to enter a much shorter Express Pass line for almost every ride in the Universal Orlando Resort. There are 2 tiers of Express Pass, one that allows you one skip the line per ride, and another that offers unlimited line entries. That's it. That's essentially all of the homework a guest needs to do to have a good day at the Universal Orlando Resort. Universal does not implement any kind of virtual or complicated queue system for new attractions. Guests can simply queue in the normal standby line for any attraction, or pay once for Express Pass that is valid for the entire day. And depending on when a guest visits, most guests don't need Express Pass to have a good day. Generally, the lines are manageable, and it's easy for guests to experience most or all of the attractions in a Universal Orlando park in one day. In my personal experience, last time I went to Universal in the middle of summer 2022, I did not purchase Express Pass. Even with a handful of hour to 2-hour lines, I fit a satisfying amount of attractions into my day. Meanwhile, to many guests, Disney almost requires that guests buy into the system to some degree to maximize their park days. I will again bring up my own experience visiting Orlando in 2024. I did opt not to use Genie Plus or the Lightning Lane services in any way during my visit, but instead, I opted to pay for several park days to ensure that I could get on all of the attractions I wanted to. Plus, while I didn't use those systems, I did have to make park reservations during my visit and had to deal with the very stressful virtual queue system to get on the new, at the time, Cosmic Rewind. I found that visiting Universal was far less stressful. The lines were more manageable and there were no complicated apps or systems to utilize to maximize my park day. In addition to all of this, Disney has made many anti-consumer choices recently, particularly in the past few years following the pandemic. For one, Disney has become infamous for raising their prices often, usually at least once a year, while at the same time cutting back on perks, lowering the quality of products and experiences, and making the overall guest experience worse. Many, if not most, consumers in the U.S. have been blocked out of having a Disney vacation by these price increases. Next, Disney began charging for parking at resorts for resort guests, a policy that they did not used to have. This was eventually eliminated, but that does not entirely rectify the fact that they did begin implementing this policy. At the same time that they started charging for parking at resorts, Disney World stopped operating the Magical Express, a free bus service from the Orlando airport to the Walt Disney World Resort for hotel guests that had run since 2005. This service was a perk of staying at a Disney Resort hotel, which encouraged guests to stay on site at Disney World. Next, very recently in spring and summer 2024, Disney made changes to their Disability Access Service, or DAS. This system allowed people with disabilities to apply for accommodations when it comes to queuing. Disney changed their policy so that the only people who could apply for the DAS were people with specific disabilities, ones that they labeled developmental disorders, such as autism spectrum disorder. They claimed that they did this because some people were abusing the system. This meant that many people who previously qualified for and had been using the DAS no longer qualified. Now, park fans who no longer qualify for the DAS are raising concerns with the policy change and calling on Disney to listen to their complaints and take back the policy. Disney has not yet responded to those upset by the change. This is a step back for Disney in terms of disability inclusion and accommodation, and is another blow to the relationship between Disney and its consumers. Disney has not only been implementing anti-consumer policies, but they've also made recent changes that affect their staff as well. I previously mentioned this summer's cast member blackout dates, which barred cast members from entering Magic Kingdom and experiencing the new Tiana's Bayou adventure. On top of this, Disney very recently announced changes to their Disney Aspire program. This was a program that covered the tuition of Disney cast members if they were currently in school while working at Disney. Many cast members relied on this to afford their education. However, in September of 2024, Disney announced a funding cap of $5,250 per person per year and removed master's programs and trade schools from the Aspire program entirely. Many cast members have spoken out about how this is going to negatively impact them, but to my knowledge, Disney has not responded. So, Disney has released a troubling and underwhelming recent slate of new attractions and made their consumer and employee experiences considerably worse. Meanwhile, Universal has preserved and improved their generally simple and positive guest experience and released a couple of absolute knockout attractions. Now, of course, it is not always that simple. Disney has its pros and Universal has its fair share of cons. However, these ideas seem to be the overall trend of the two park chains in the past 5 years, and most park fans and visitors seem to be forming increasingly positive associations with Universal parks and increasingly negative associations with Disney parks. But we haven't covered what's on the horizon. I've formatted this video around the changes and new additions that have occurred in the parks since 2019. 2019 was a turning point for a few reasons. First of all, Galaxy's Edge and Hagrid's Magical Creatures motorbike adventure opened in 2019, two significant additions that set the parks on new courses in response to their openings. Second, 2019 was the last quote-unquote normal year before the COVID-19 pandemic, which of course drastically impacted the theme park industry and the park's policies following this year. Finally, in 2019, Universal announced that it was building a new theme park in Orlando, Florida called Epic Universe. At this point, I think most everybody has at least heard that Epic Universe is under construction. Or maybe you're like me and you've been intently following construction since 2019. Either way, if you've heard anything about Epic Universe, you've probably heard of its high likelihood of being an absolute game changer for the Orlando theme park industry when it opens in summer 2025. I won't cover the lands and attractions that are being planned for Epic Universe in their entirety in this video for two reasons. First of all, that feels like a slight derailment of the focus of this video. Second, I understand if viewers are looking to avoid spoilers about what is being planned and constructed for Epic Universe. But I will cover the general lands and scale of this park. Universal's Epic Universe is planned to feature 5 lands on opening day. First is Celestial Park, which will serve as the hub of the park, and has already had a couple of attractions announced. Next, Universal will finally be giving Florida their own Super Nintendo World. Super Nintendo World has already opened at Universal Studios Japan and Universal Studios Hollywood, and has had very positive reception. I consider the land to be very well designed and well executed, with great kinetic energy and attention to detail, two things that I think add a ton to the quality of a theme park land. To my knowledge, it has been a big success at both of the parks it has already opened in. Next, Epic Universe will feature a land based on Universal's classic monster movies, a land based on the How to Train Your Dragon movie series, and a third land based on the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. Many specific attractions have been announced for Epic Universe, including several major roller coasters and many rides that feature new and innovative theme park technology. Overall, Universal promises that Epic Universe will be high budget, high tech, and full of life, creativity, and thrills. Park fans have been enthusiastic about the impending opening of Epic Universe since its announcement, with excitement only growing as more details are announced. Many have said that Epic Universe will elevate the theme park industry as a whole, and will be another step towards Universal becoming a legitimate competitor to Disney parks. Personally, I think that if Epic Universe lives up to what has been promised of it so far, it has potential to be the best singular theme park in the Western Hemisphere. For a moment, let's pivot to talk about Disney one more time. In August 2024, Disney held its annual D23 Fan Expo in Anaheim, California. In the past few years, Disney has received a fair amount of criticism following their D23 expos, with many fans who attended the event or followed along with announcements saying that the things that Disney was announcing at the expo were more blue sky concepts than actual announcements. Blue sky is the phase in theme park planning where designers are told to reach for the sky and create plans for what they would do if things such as space and budget were not an issue. They are not tangible plans. They are essentially rough drafts, concepts of what they might be able to do. Many of the announcements for park additions at recent D23 expos were less, "We are definitely doing this," and more, "Wouldn't it be cool if we could do this?" This year, however, at D23, Disney made a series of very tangible and confident announcements about new additions to the parks, and there's some very promising and legitimate ideas in the announcement slate. At the panel, executives made major announcements for almost all of the Disney parks. But just for Walt Disney World, they announced a new land in Animal Kingdom called Tropical Americas, which would feature an Indiana Jones attraction to replace Dinosaur, as well as some kind of Encanto attraction, a new show in Animal Kingdom's Tree of Life based on Zootopia, a Monsters, Inc. land for Hollywood Studios, a new storyline for Smuggler's Run in Hollywood Studios featuring The Mandalorian and Grogu, a new nighttime parade for Magic Kingdom, a unique Cars land for Magic Kingdom, and a Disney Villains land in Magic Kingdom behind Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, as well as new details about the previously announced Pirates of the Caribbean Tavern in Magic Kingdom and Test Track version 3 in Epcot. The response to all of these major announcements generally was, Universal must really have them scared. Now, I'm not saying that Disney is about to become number 2 in the theme park industry after decades of dominance in the field, and I'm not saying that Disney is on a complete downward spiral while Universal creates perfection. I'm simply recognizing trends in the industry and in park fans' attitudes towards these two park chains. Universal has been on an almost perfect winning streak in the past few years, and that doesn't appear to be slowing down, as Epic Universe begins to loom over the theme park horizon as summer 2025 finally gets closer and closer. I don't believe that Disney will be toppled as the titan of the theme park industry, but I do think it's fair to say that Universal does in fact have them a little scared. At the very least, my hopes for the future of the Orlando theme park industry is that this becomes a good dose of healthy competition. I would not stand by the statement that competition always breeds innovation. However, I would say that we've seen times in the theme park industry before where competition encouraged theme parks and park chains to try out various methods of one-upping each other. The so-called coaster war, which lasted from the late 80s to the early 2000s, is an example of that. This was a period of time where theme parks, mostly in the United States but also worldwide, were working with coaster manufacturers to continuously take records from each other, with the new park frequently building the tallest, fastest, longest, or some other record-breaking coaster. As an example, in this time, the world saw the first roller coasters over 200, 300, and 400 feet, and this record has not yet been broken again by an operating roller coaster since the end of the coaster war. Another example of a time that competition improved the theme park industry is a recent period of time that I've already discussed in this video, the one-upping of Disney and Universal to see who can build the next best immersive land following Universal's first entry in the wizarding world of Harry Potter. Competition does not always breed innovation, but in the theme park industry, particularly in the United States and even more so in Orlando, we are in an increasingly interesting time, and if the trends continue the way they are, I believe we will continue to see more good faith towards Universal, while once devoted Disney fans continue to lose faith in the company that once ruled the theme park world.